Good afternoon. Happy Sunday. You're tuned into arts, culture, and things in between. Hope your day has started off as planned. I'm Rose October, and I would like to thank you for joining me. Like I do every Sunday, I tell you a little bit about arts, culture, and things in between because I don't take it for granted that you know about it, especially for those of you who are joining for the first time. I welcome you. And those of you who are coming back, I welcome you too. Let me tell you a little bit about arts, culture, and things in between. This is a program that features individuals who are gatekeepers of all arts and culture. They are not only performing artists, but also teachers, advocates, and scholars who focus on the preservation of the arts and culture. When arts is mentioned, is being referred to as the different art forms like visual, applied, or performing arts. Examples of visual arts would be like painting, sculpting, photography, film. Examples of applied arts would be like architecture, as in designing or building or constructing a project. Fashion design comes under applied arts, where the fashion designer is working with different types of patterns and fabrics. Jewelry designing comes under applied arts, where the jewelry designer is working with materials such as wood, plastic, metal, silver, and gold, in addition to working with the various types of stones. Furniture designing also comes under applied arts, where the furniture designer is working with various types of woods and also laying woods in different ways, cutting the woods different ways and designing the woods in different ways. So that's the piece about arts. I must tell you about performing arts. I just told you about visual arts. Let me tell you about performing arts. That would include music, photography, film, theater, opera, drama, singing, stand-up comedy, and the one that always brings a smile to my face, dance. So arts is the first part of the name of the program. The other part is, there are three parts. The other part is culture. So when culture is mentioned, it generally means the way of life for a particular group of people. So for this program, it is inclusive to mean the various groups of individuals that embrace ways of life. In other words, looking at attitudes and behaviors. But what is important to note is that as culture is mentioned, I'm really looking at how practices are passed from one generation to another. Things in between. The last part of the name of the program, arts, culture, and things in between. This has to do with life's issues and how these affect the execution of the arts and cultural practices. This involves both positive and negative experiences that become part of the creative process. Today's guest is a performing artist. But before I introduce my guest to you, I would like to share the bio. Andre M. Zachery is a dancer, choreographer, and interdisciplinary artist who was born and raised in Chicago. Might I add, he's also a scholar and technologist. His involvement in the arts was destined due to family members who were artists themselves. In 2002, he moved to Brooklyn and is now considered a Brooklyn-based interdisciplinary artist of Haitian and African-American ancestry. He's also a researcher who holds a Bachelor of Fine Arts from Ailey Fordham University and a Master of Fine Arts in Performance and Interactive Media Arts from CUNY Brooklyn College. As the artistic director of Renegade Performance Group, his practice, research, and community engagement artistically focus on merging of choreography, technology, and Black cultural practices through multimedia work. Andre's works through Renegade Performance Group have been presented domestically and internationally, receiving support through several residencies, awards, and commissions. These have included the CUNY Dance Initiative, Performance Project Residency at University Settlement, Choreo Quest Residency at Restoration Arts Brooklyn, Three-Legged Dog, Art and Technology Center, Harvest Works, and a Jerome-supported movement research area. He's been awarded grants from the Brooklyn Arts Council, Harlem Stage Fund for New York, and a Slate Property Space Award. Commissions have come from the Brooklyn Museum, 5 Miles, Break Biennial, and Dance Space Project. Renegade Performance Group's outstanding works have been favorably published in the New York Times, the New Yorker, the Village Voice, CultureBot, Infinite Blockspot, Futuristically Ancient, Hyperallergic, the Brooklyn Rail, the Daily News, and Afropunk. As a technologist, Andre has collaborated with various artists through Renegade Performance Group, the design team of 3LD Art and Technology Center, and the Clever Agency. These works have included design, installations, immersive media productions, filming, editing, and performance collaboration. He has worked on projects across artistic mediums as a choreographer, media designer, and consultant. Some of those artists are Danielle Bernard Romaine, Cynthia Hopkins, Davalos Fieron, Dance Caribbean Collective, Aaron Maya, Rags and Ribbons, The Clever Agency, Kendra Foster, and Spike Lee. As a scholar, Andre has been a panelist and presented his research at institutions such as Duke University, Brooklyn College, University of Virginia, and Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Research papers presented focused on a myriad of topics, including Afrofuturism, African diaspora practices and philosophies, Black cultural aesthetics, technology in art and performance, and on expanding the boundaries of art making within communities. He has taught at Brooklyn College, and he's been a guest faculty member at the dance programs of Florida State University, Virginia Commonwealth University, the Ohio State University, and University of California, Los Angeles. In addition to all of these, Andre has been a leader of group talks and a facilitator of discussions. He has been the 2016 New York Foundation for the Arts Gregory Millett Fellow in Choreography. And in 2019, he was also the Jerome Hill Foundation Fellow in Choreography. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I say no more about my esteemed guest, Andre M. Zachery. I feel like there should be a drum roll, Andre, you know, a thunder or something, some kind of big fanfare to welcome you. How are you, Andre?
Hey, good afternoon, Dr. Rose. I'm doing well. Thank you so much. I'm doing good. I'm enjoying these last few weeks in August as much as I can. I'm away with my partner right now, Zachery from New York City, and just trying to enjoy it as much time as we can because we've both been working extremely hard in light of everything that is happening in the world right now. But um, it's it's an honor first to speak with you and to be in conversation with you. And it's humbling to hear you as well introduce me. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the conversation today. Thank you.
So excited. I am so excited, because one of the things that I said to my colleague Claire Goring, I said, Andre is the best kept secret in Brooklyn. I can't believe that he has done all of this great work and continues to do it. And it's like, yeah, hi, Andre, how are you doing? Yes, Doctor. And we're just, hiing and I couldn't believe that we didn't stop before, but here we are today. So welcome, and I'm glad to hear that you and partner are taking some time off, because you two are the hardest working people in the dance spaces that I know in Brooklyn. So I know, take your rest. But I'm glad that you
thank you
found the time, to sit and chat with me. So I have to ask you, one of the things that I learned from you is that you had no choice. I guess while you were in your mom's belly, she probably was rubbing the belly saying, you're going to be a dancer, you're going to be an artist, you're going to be a something, right? Because, and this is just me being funny, but because you said you were destined kind of to do this, given that your family members were artists in their own right. So let me ask you this. How old were you when you realized you wanted to become a dancer? Let's go there.
Oh, that was later. I would say I was probably maybe around 19.
Oh.
Yeah, 19, 20 years old.
So what was happening before then? What were you
before
in terms of
yeah, I mean, as you said earlier, I was put in dance at a very early age, at around age 4 years old.
Okay.
And so, dance training and being in the arts had been a part of my life. I remember being forced to take piano, I think when I was 10 years old, which was the best. Um, that was the best form of coercion ever. I'm very glad that I was forced to take the piano. Later on in I think eighth grade and ninth grade, I played the trumpet. Um, my original actual university concentration was architecture. I love design. On my father's side of the family, my father's a very good illustrator and designer. Um, yeah, and so becoming well, I would say when I um, made a decision or made the commitment to become an artist and a dancer, I had just finished my first year in university, and so I I had been awarded a scholarship to dance at Harlem after completing a first year of university in architecture, and I came to New York. I loved it. Um, I had never seen so many beautiful black people, smart and intelligent, and um, touring the world, and I knew at that moment that I wanted to be an artist and then specifically a dancer.
Wow. So you started out with architecture.
Yes, in university, yeah, and yeah, and design, yeah.
No, that's quite a switch. I mean, for me, I don't know anything about architecture, right? But that it has to do with lovely buildings, and that's my scope of knowledge regarding about architecture. So you started off your college life thinking that you'll go this route.
Right.
What I'm guessing that you probably took a dance class or something at college, whereby that led the way for you to get the scholarship. How did that work?
Well, I mean, I was in high school. I was also an athlete, so I ran track, especially. I played both uh, so I knew I was like, well, I want to stay in shape. And at the time, I went to Florida A&M University, and FAMU just had an enormous amount of, I mean, just on historically black colleges and universities. The thing is, there's a lot of dance because we as black people we dance, and
Right.
so I mean, there's dance clubs. Florida A&M officially had a college. They didn't have a college program. Florida State did, where I started taking classes. No, I mean I had been taking dance class, long like I said, long before I entered university. So dance like training was a part of my own my background and who I was. From classical ballet to then later in high school, modern um, and like West African and capoeira especially. And then I mean, and you just I grew up literally in the thick of the '90s hip hop era and then Chicago hip hop and house era. So house dancing, Chicago footwork, break dancing. That just yeah, dance hall, and like '90, getting the import of '90s dance hall culture from Jamaica. I mean, that was just a part of kind of like my daily life, and yeah, I was just it's just kind of who I was. But um, I think the decision to uh really go into the profession of dance, um, I don't know. I think it was something where uh, well, what happened specifically? There was a audition for a scholarship or to Dance State of Harlem that was at Florida State University where I was starting to take classes as well, which is in the Tallahassee, Florida, just pretty much adjacent to Florida A&M. And so I said, yeah, sure, why not? I had never been to New York, and you know, I worked hard. I got the scholarship to Dance State of Harlem, which is amazing. So the first part of that summer when I finished school, I went back. I worked at an architecture firm. I was interning at a firm already.
Okay.
I worked for 6 weeks, and my boss, who was a family friend, she who was actually, and that shout out to Ramona. She was the first Black woman American Institute of Architect in the state of Illinois. Wonderful mentor of mine. I think she was just like, you're amazing as an architect, but she was just like, you have this talent, this God given talent for dance. Don't ever give that up. And she was very encouraging. And so then the latter part of June and all July, I went to New York for DTH, and I think it really was about me being in New York City that was the turning point and catalyst. Whereas much of yeah dance, but yeah, I think it was really being in the city and seeing an artistic community like I had never seen before. Chicago has one, but not never on the level of what New York is. And that really kind of became my turning point of saying, you know what, I think I want to do this.
Wow. So you got hooked. You got hooked in New York.
I did, definitely.
How did your parents influence your interest in art? So in the arts. So you were playing instruments, right, from an early age and that kind of a thing. I have to say this, and please don't take it the wrong way. I listened to you just now rattle off all of these things that you've done. You played the piano, you played the this, you played the that. And I'm saying, looking at Andre, he's so unassuming, but please take that in a good way. I really mean that in a complimentary way, because you're saying all of this stuff, and I'm saying all of this stuff in this one person. No way. No way. No way.
Yeah.
Admiration for you, Andre. But tell me, how did your parents really coach you along, aside from maybe banging your finger saying you got to play that piano at 10 years old? I don't care what, whether you were fighting up against it or what. Tell us, how were they involved in grooming you as an artist?
Um. So my mother was a dancer. My grandmother put my mom in dance classes when she was young, and so my mother fell in love with dance, specifically ballet. She didn't pursue it professionally. She danced a little bit, I think, when she was in university, but never on an extensive level. And so then, like I said, my grandmother, my mother's mother, um, who's still alive, and then even my grandpère, my Haitian grandfather, he um he was a wonderful singer actually, and he could dance like honestly, my grandfather can really dance. His compa, South Maring,
Well,
all from IT. But again, my mother put me in dance when I was 4 years old. Family outings for us were going downtown in the summer and hearing the Chicago Symphony Orchestra or Chicago Mass Choir, and that was literally just what we did. Going to hear jazz legends such as like Ramsey Lewis, who's an amazing jazz legend in Chicago. Yeah, so I guess as you were saying earlier, that it wasn't just kind of like an adjacent thing. That was actually very integral to making a person. And so again, my mom put me in dance, and I was good at it, and I was a very physical child. Loved to run, and so for me, dance was like, oh wow, this is amazing. I get to do all this and turn it, and it was just that was just what it was like. Oh wow, I get to use my body in this way, perfect. And so I was involved in classical ballet mainly from age um, around age 4 to 7. I went to a school named Mayfair, which was we did jazz and ballet and tap, the gymnastics, and then from around age 6, 7 to about 12, I really studied classical ballet like as a like as like hard and
mhm,
also balancing. I was also playing soccer at the time. Um, then in high school, around 13, I was just like, I don't want to dance anymore. And I started playing athletics. But um, around my senior year of high school, around age 17, I started to pick dance back up. Um, and then during that time, I would also still dance with my church dance ministry, but not taking a class. So again, that was just that wasn't like adjacent. That was literally a part of kind of my home training to become an artist, really, which I think is more ironic for my family actually. Because when I said I was going to become an artist and dancer, they were like, "Huh?" I'm like, "Well, you put me in this thing. Like, why did you expect me not to do it?" And they were like, "Oh yeah, I guess that makes sense." I'm like, "Oh yeah," but
yeah,
I was like, "Wow," but um, yeah, that was on that on that end, my family really just I would say that gave me the tools, or at least put me in proximity to express myself artistically on all fronts, really.
nice. Yep. Yeah, that's a nice story. You had no choice.
No, I really did not. No, I did not have a
But you know
choice.
what? It was good not having any choices. It really was good not having any choices, I would say.
Oh, but I have no complaints about that.
Oh,
Zero at all. Like our child, hopefully, inshallah, will not have a choice either. That no,
so let me ask you about Renegade Performance Group.
sure,
You spearhead that company, right?
I do, I do.
Let's talk about the uniqueness of the company. But before we talk about that, what's in the name? Renegade Performance Group.
Yeah. So the Renegade Performance Group. I guess I'll start kind of backwards,
Mhm.
moving forward. So the performance group um, was about me early on realizing that I was going to do more than just create dance and choreography. While that would be an integral, like the integral base of what I was doing and creating, I knew that I was going to be working with film. I knew I wanted to collaborate with other artists. I knew that it would be cross disciplinary and interdisciplinary. And so um, the performance group kind of came from that element. It also was an extension. I was really influenced by um, uh, an artist, the really great Reggie Wilson, um, and his company Fist and Heel Performance Group. Um, and I thought it really just gave space to uh, these various forms and medium for artists to create in.
Mhm.
Beyond that, Renegade, it was something where I did not want to. I thought about using my name, and I was just like, that's just not. Of course, everyone uses their name, like, oh yes, my name, the company, and I was just like, that's not something about that just didn't sit right with me. And so then I thought about the um, something was going on. No, that's what it was. We were at the ironically, the height of the Iraq War,
Mhm.
and I was reading something about an RPG hitting um, hitting something, and I said, that's it. That's the acronym, Renegade Performance Group, and like, how do we turn really this terrible situation, or like really make it something? And then at the time, Renegade was really something that to me was also emblematic of being black in the United States, and in this like what blackness is in the United States, and how it um, is. And the more I guess that was even precocious myself, that was an antidote to conformity, to playing it safe. And I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit later, but in a sense that all of those kind of hidden messages are often about capitulating and this to white supremacy, whereas it's like, no, like, what does blackness mean? What does it embody? And being a renegade was that, being a Malon, a maroon, to really go against the grain. And so for me, that became kind of that was it. It was like, great, Renegade Performance Group, and to me, it said everything it needed to say.
And the group is doing everything that you just said. I can tell you. When I sat and watched the
Wow.
works of Renegade Performance Group, I was blown. I was blown. It's everything you just said plus some. Let's take a quick look at a slideshow, and then I'll have role play a clip of your I think we'll look at On Tamed Faces, I think, the film.
Untamed Space. Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's take a look.
Great.
Okay. Wow. Oh my goodness, Andre. So we saw in the first piece, the slideshow, we saw some elements. You got some legs that take you to the sky, man. Look at the height you are taking with you as you do those jumps and the form. You were built for this. You were built for this. Listen, you've given me candy, as you can tell, right?
Thank you.
You've given me candy. Awesome. And then when we look at the piece of Untamed Space, we have to spend some time talking about that because
Of course.
there's so many elements there. But let's go here first.
Mm-hmm.
You're a dancer, choreographer, and interdisciplinary artist. Dance is foundational in most of your work, if not all of it, right?
Yes.
By focusing only on dance for a minute, not going into the aspects of your other expertise.
Mm-hmm.
How do you create a choreography? Because I'm looking at Untamed Space, and you guys are out in the natural wilderness.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes.
What? How do you create a choreography?
Wow. So some of my work really is built from my choreographic language of physicality and technique of like flying low, which is a floor work technique that's really rooted in elements such as capoeira and Angola especially. Um,
Tell us what that
and
is.
then capoeira Angola is a form of martial art and dance that was transported to Brazil through the enslaved Africans that were transported through the colonization of the Portuguese,
Okay.
which also subsequently colonized Brazil. And so, in the not in the now current Brazilian country, but then former Brazilian colony, capoeira formed as a conversation of this Africanist martial art from present day Angola with various First Nations and peoples in Brazil into now what we know as capoeira. And capoeira is an art form, but also again a martial art, a dance that holds song, tradition, and physical practice as an element of holding the various spirits as well as Orisha um, uh, in ceremony in hodas. And so when I look at flying low, so many of these elements that exist in that technique to me really translate directly from this practice. Um, but then as well, of course, I bring in my modern dance training that I received at Alvin Ailey, and Lester Horton technique, Graham technique, as well as Limon. Um, so I guess from the vocabulary side, then finally I also incorporate, my own work, my own embodiment in hip hop, and what that meant, and for me growing up as well, as my own cultural practice. So that's I guess from the movement side, and all of those kind of get put into this pot, and create this bouillon, if you will. Um, but then I guess in making a dance beyond that, it becomes something about for me telling this narrative of, well, I guess what I call futuring practice, specifically looking at my Afrofuturism work. I'm looking at what were the practices that we as Black people did in this hemisphere to at at the same time retain our elements of our Africanness past, but to mix them into a new culture, and in conversation and in practice create our new existence in the diaspora. And so I'm looking at what I considered and call futuring actions. And from there, I think about telling the story. um, and seeing how that gets embodied in us as dancers, and you know, and builds ultimately into a dance.
Yeah, and of course, how the audience receives it.
Yes,
Yeah.
and then ultimately how the audience receives it and takes it.
So
Yes.
with what we just watched on Team Space, you were in this triangle, if I may. What was
Aha.
happening there?
Yes.
What was happening there? Because there was a little bit of eroticism. At least this is me being a
Hmm.
part of the audience, right? This is what I'm
Hmm.
seeing. Some sultriness, some. It's like a triangulation thing that was unfolding there. And then the piece
Hmm.
that really had me was you behind the glass doing something that I can't describe. Only you can.
Ah.
So talk to me about that. Talk to me about the idea behind On Tame Space with respect to you're out, and I'm going to say in the park, just to give it some kind of um, some kind of placement for me in my head, right? So it's like you're in the park having a picnic with two gals. I don't know if they belong to you seriously or not. If there's an understanding between the amongst the three of you seriously or not. But then you guys
Right.
thing, right? You're having a picnic of some kind, and then you're going through these different emotions, and then all of a sudden you're behind the glass watching these two. This is just me. That's what I got. So tell us. You
Yeah. Well, apart. Well, I would say all of that is definitely in there, but I think to more we actually shot it at the Weeksville Heritage Center,
where was
and
that?
the the historic Weeksville Heritage Center is located in Present Day Brooklyn, New York. It was founded in 1833, named after James Weeks, who himself and his family, along with five other families, uh, were Africans in New York State, and they were the first five families or a few families to create what would become the Weeksville community, a free black community in Brooklyn, New York,
Do you
from
know if it's
1830.
close? I'm sorry about cutting you.
Yeah,
Do
yeah.
you know if it's close to like Church Avenue side? Do you remember that?
No, that's yes. Oh yeah. Weeksville is not far from where I live now. I live in Crown Heights, Brooklyn.
Oh,
So Weeksville,
okay.
yeah. So Weeksville is between Eastern Parkway and Fulton Street, but specifically it's on Bergen Street between Utica and like the present day now they call the Hunter Fly Road houses,
Okay. Okay.
the three or four homes that still remain.
Okay.
And so this community was built up to over it was close to 700 residents. They had their own post office, school, several barbershops. Back then, Brooklyn, and this is pre Civil War, post Civil War. Brooklyn was still actually a balance of urban and agrarian. Um, you know, they farmed, they fished, um, growing um, growing crops was a big part of their sustainment as a community.
Mhm.
Um, Weeksville essentially was it was a stop on the Underground Railroad. They harbored many Africans who freed themselves, and so essentially, my Untamed Space was talking about marooning as a featuring practice, and so for me, I was looking to literally locate what it meant for spaces that you know essentially Africans liberated themselves, and what that really looked like. I think part of my challenge back to audience is as you just said, where do we actually see this enjoyment of black people living life? Um, yes, especially in a West Indian context, we can look at as we can look at carnival culture as like this moment and this period of time. But then I asked, beyond that, what about sustainment in the mundane? As you're saying, the enjoyment to lay out with your family, with your lovers, with people that you really like, and feel safe to take in food. Like when has that happened in a place where, in a space where that is really has been sustainable? And Weeksville was a representative of that community. Part of that tableau, as you were showing, there's a one of the visual artists who I'm inspired by, Kerry James Marshall, has a beautiful piece called "A Pastime" that I was actually basing that entire choreography and kind of mise en scène on. That, in a way, as you're saying, the sensuality of enjoyment, of this finding pleasure in the everyday, is ironically something that is a difficult task for Black people in this hemisphere, um, that we often have to liberate ourselves to be able to do. And so that's what part of seeing Untamed Space was about. And as you're saying, receiving that from your as a viewer, saying, "Wow, like this is I'm getting these emotions of seeing these people relate to each other, be with each other in all of these forms, whether it's enjoyment, sensuality, sexuality, what have you." I think that that's all really, really important. Um, that I want our eyes to actually begin to recognize, and then beyond recognize, really affirm and say that that should exist.
And you know what? I like your explanation in the sense that it's okay for us to be affectionate in the open. And
Yes.
also, we also do not need, we don't need to misconstrue affection as something sexual.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So I think what you've done there with Untamed Space is give us permission to show emotion. Give us permission to be emotional beings without feeling ashamed of it or having to hide it away in private. So that's good. But before we take another look at more of your work, tell me about the piece with you behind the window. What was the significance?
That was a funny. That was a suggestion from one of my collaborators, the cinematographer Lamont Hamilton.
Okay.
Lamont was noticing how the glass was extremely reflective um, on the houses, and he said, "Hey, can you actually do that?" He said, "I'm going to focus on the glass of you just doing the same choreography that you're doing, but instead of focusing on you, your reflection." And I was like, "Perfect, great, let's do it." And then in the footage and seeing it, it was just like, wow, that's actually pretty beautiful. And so it created like this, um, almost like this additional layer of myself,
Yeah.
if you will, that um, I guess I thought was worth exploring. Really, it was something I said, let me try and insert this into the work and see what it's, and then kind of in the visual narrative of the putting the film together, it really worked.
But you know what? After I had sat and watched so many of the works by Renegade, it really fitted into who you are and the type of work that you do.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
in line with your signature, I would say. Man.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
You hit it. Let's watch some more of your work. So to those of you who joined us late, I'm Rose October, sitting with Andre Zachery, who is fantastic at everything. You will sit through this and you will totally enjoy it. Let's take a watch of some more of Andre's work, and then we'll come back and talk some more about it. Andre, I don't know if I'll make it alive by the end of this. I don't know. I'm so excited about your work. So we just saw two pieces. The first piece with you as the soloist doing the digital middle passage, and then the other one, the Afrofuturism series. Let's talk about the digital middle passage first. Now, my senses were stimulated. I didn't know where to look because it was you doing the choreography. Then there was the piece on the back that you'll teach me what I'll call the piece on the back so that I'll become a little more educated, you know, and sound sensible when I speak of these things. I know it's some form of media that you were using in the back. And then you had live music. You had the guy on the cello. And I know, I'm not sure if that piece showed that he played the drum, but I know in part of that piece, he also put on the cello at one time and he played the drum. So tell us about what's going on there.
Yeah, Digital Middle Passage is a piece that I created in collaboration with a composer named Yvonne K. Paradis. Yvonne, I was really interested in working with the cellist, and Yvonne had created a piece for a cellist, and she was also interested in creating it as an electroacoustic cellist work, and so I told her about the conception of the work, what I was trying to I was considering this kind of idea of uh, almost like a next middle passage, and that was inspired by the work of John Alcomfra, um, and his beautiful piece called "The Last Angel of History." This is a film he did, an Afrofuturist film he did in 1995. which was kind of based off his idea of like fractal coding, the black body. And so I was thinking of how the Middle Passage was this essentially traumatic transformation. And so what did it mean to then transform the body into this the black body into a digital space, and um, not have the idea of it being a forced sense of capture, but what did it mean to then take ourselves into that space, with agency and authority. Um, so that was kind of the concept. Yvonne, the cellist was Ansel Cohen, and then the sound artist next to Ansel was um, oh God, Matthew. Oh God, I forgot Matthew's last name. I'm sorry. Um, Amazing sound artist as well. Um, and then finally, what you saw in the media you saw in the back was, um, I created a digital interactive projection of myself. So I was able to install a camera at the top of on top, looking down on top of me, which then captured me, and then I was able to feedback that in a loop to then project onto the rear wall. So it created almost like this immersive experience of myself and then my body, in three different dimensions.
All right.
And
So
so yeah.
hold 1 second there, Andre.
Yeah.
So again, because I'm slow in these areas of multimedia stuff, right? I am looking at in awe. And I'm sure that many who are being exposed to this for the first time, looking at this right now, they are too. And I'll give you a joke, and it's okay to laugh. So when I read about you and watched your work, I was like, oh, this is interdisciplinary art too, because I have a colleague who teaches with me. He's an artist, and he calls himself an interdisciplinary artist. So get this, this is where the joke comes. He works with photography, he works with video, and he works with other things. So Rose October, with her limited knowledge, for some reason just thought that interdisciplinary artist is only what? You know, interdisciplinary art is only what Terry does, right? And then I bumped into Andre's interdisciplinary artistry. And I'm saying to myself, Rose, you need to really, really stop and do some more research on this stuff. And you're calling yourself an artist. So I was laughing at myself. So now that you finished laughing at me, Andre.
No, not at all.
So you are a true interdisciplinary artist. And I think without me asking the question, you just explained to us what your interdisciplinary artistry looks like, or at least part of what it looks like, because there's so many different ways that you can work with the disciplines within and across the disciplines. So for individuals who are watching and hearing about this for the first time, if you wanted to give a quick school or a quick explanation as to how someone becomes an interdisciplinary artist in as layman terms as you can say, how would you describe it?
I don't know. I guess how do you become an interdisciplinary artist?
Yeah, because listen, here's what I'm thinking.
I'm repeating the question back to
you. Here's the thing. Yeah. I am thinking layman terms, right? You're immersed in this, so you're thinking all the fancy things. But here's what I'm thinking. For example, if we want to make me Rose October, right? If I want to call myself an interdisciplinary artist with some coaching from you, right? I am thinking that I can do a choreography, right? I can do a voice over piece, right? And meld it with my choreography, right? I can probably do some dramatic something. I'm looking at all the different pieces of art that anybody can mismatch, kind of, sort of, and put it together. And if I were a young, Rose October, I'm thinking, and really into the multimedia stuff. You know what I mean? I can bring in some of the elements of the visual piece, the audio, this and that, because when I look at your work,
Right.
and I'm just simplifying it, and I don't mean to minimize it in any way.
No, please.
But I'm just trying to cast some ways in which how I am beginning to understand into the interdisciplinary artistry. And you please feel free to correct me as I go along, because I am thinking that it really allows for creatives to explore beyond their wildest dreams. And I don't know if you have gotten through those, you know, those experiences so much so that you're comfortable and you take what I just mentioned, that ordinary compilation, you know,
Yes.
like, yeah, all right, yeah, that's a start, you know. So what are your thoughts with what I just mentioned?
You know, I'm gonna point. I'm gonna point to another artist who I believe we both know and respect as well, and
Mm-hmm.
that's Rosamond S. King.
Okay.
And so, for Rosamond's piece that she presented for Dance Caribbean Collective in 2017, Tiny Whiny, I
Mm-hmm.
think isn't a great example of
Yep.
bringing all of that home. So, in the sense that we see Rosamond in, I believe she made that entire outfit,
Right.
the entire blue ensemble and then designed and styled
Mm-hmm.
the headpiece as well, with the cane.
Right.
Of course, she's the choreographer. I actually was able to collaborate with her on the sound and the concept of the work. Um, that's to me an example of like a true interdisciplinary artist. And then of course, um, what Rosamond was not able to introduce. I don't like her poetry and her writing was not able to be into the piece. But to me, that's an example. But her poetry and writing is speaking about this black womanist, black femme, African Caribbeanist being and embodiment, and how that kind of comes together visually, movement wise, sonically,
Right.
design. And I think that's one of the best ways, or one of the best people I can show, in the sense that becoming an interdisciplinary artist is being able to express your thoughts, emotions, and ideas through as many mediums as possible,
Mm-hmm.
as you're saying, without feeling constrained
Right.
or bound in one lane.
Mm-hmm.
And not only do those lanes, and I think the training and the ability to have time to consider it and do it well really creates these beautiful avenues that crisscross and seamlessly merge into the other without a sense of like trafficking.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what really becoming an interdisciplinary artist does. It, like, each channel supports another channel, and allows, as you're saying, the audience to really have this really sensory experience. Um, Before that, I can look to, someone we all know, Jeffrey Holder. Um, it's not known that Jeffrey Holder was an amazing painter and visual artist um, as well as being, a choreographer. He was an amazing vocalist. He could sing tremendously well. Of course, his acting, um, abilities, directing. Um, of course, he was a fashion designer. He designed many of his own costumes. Um, and I guess that's been a part of our traditions for a long time. Um, that ironically, I feel sometimes the professionalizing or schooling of it, um, in ways that are often quite derogatory, especially when they get attributed to cultural practice, designate them as folk,
Yeah.
as if the folk practice doesn't yield the same intricate detail of training, of apprenticeship, of craftship, um, of mastery over time that it indeed does. But that indeed it's, it's just like, while this quilt is being made, there might actually need to be this rocking back and forth with a that actually might make the stitching better. That is just like, well, is the humming necessary from this black woman doing it? And it's actually, well, it actually might be necessary in the doing it. You know what I'm saying? So I think that that's where, um, I guess I'm considering how that interdisciplinary ability
Yeah.
makes it.
I mean, I get it. I truly get your explanation. You know, you mentioned the whole piece about folk, and I don't know if you know, and I'm being tangential just for a bit. Brooklyn Arts Council is shutting down their folk lore, folk department at the end of the year. Unbelievable, unbelievable. I really hope that that decision is reversed. I can't believe it. Anyways, that's for another program, Andre. But let me ask you this. So in your artist statement, you mentioned that you use Black experiences in Americas to create your work. And what that is telling me is that and based on what you also shared just now, is the importance of research that must go into creativity. And I'm wondering, what about Black experiences in the Americas that make your creative juices flow?
It's our ability to be the trendsetters. I think it's interesting right now. One of the in design and in life, like, oh, repurposing is like a big thing, and it's just like, well, yeah, we've been repurposing since we arrived in this hemisphere. um, but I think it's, for me, also taking uh, the really mundane aspects of Black life that I think we take for granted, that are actually so transformative to making the world a better place. Um, it, Meaning something like the way in which we learn rhythm, the way in which we learn how to use our bodies. So I guess, growing up in um, I guess it's the irony of saying, going to living in Black spaces where Black spiritual practice is an important part of the everyday. Yes, it of course connects us with our ancestors, with our higher powers, but then it also creates, when I'm thinking about rhythm and time signature, like the basic four, like, and then there's another pattern, like, and then you just grow up learning that as just your everyday, and how to move in and out of that. That creates all the amazing artists that are popularized today. But it's really just those gatherings of people that come together that create that magic, that give you the foundation of to to transform someone in an entire other country. And that is something that I guess I'm kind of like, in looking at, as I was saying, Reggie Wilson, is an artist who I think really understands that, and we're just so taken by that. I definitely think, Catherine Dunham, yes, of course.
Mhm.
If you look to, like I was saying, Alvin Ailey, or even a Jeffrey Holder, I don't think they took those mundane elements for granted.
Right, right.
Has so much potential for the research. We look at like the big moments. I guess I'm saying, like, we look at like the Martin Luther King speech, the "I Have a Dream" speech, as like these momentous things. But for me, I as an artist, researching what's not seen, researching, okay, well, why did your grandmother do this in the kitchen, or why did your grandfather carve in this way, or why did your uncles do this? That holds so many of the key ingredients to defining our existence, and individual and collective personhoods, that really unlock some amazing things in my opinion.
You know, it's funny that we're talking about this because what you just said, plus some, I'm thinking about this whole sense of belongingness that we get. And sometimes you might look at somebody and say, oh, they have the knack for this and they have the knack for that. And it's part of that upbringing that you're talking about, you know, watching your grandmother knitting and you know, and humming that thing, and you look at a child with rhythm. You know, you put on a piece of music and nobody taught this child, and this child is just doing it, you know, and children imitating us. I am thinking all of those things have to
Yes.
do with what you're talking about, and at the same time really giving us this sense of belongingness. That's why we can look across continents and talk about my brother, you know, and my sister, and oh, you all do this there, we do this here. And that line, you know, that line that really links us throughout the world and throughout life, it's amazing. And it really speaks to what you are saying. Sometimes we find the time to research it, and sometimes we don't even know what we're doing and that it has its purpose or its foundation, something
Right.
that is spiritual.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
in your artist statement, you also mentioned that dance is more than an artistic expression, but of placemaking of multiple existences and experiences to be recognized as individual parts of a greater collection. And it kind of speaks into what we've just been talking about. And to me, that's a very philosophical statement. You know, when you say dance is more than an artistic expression, but it has to do with placemaking of multiple existences and experiences. And what you just said there in terms of explaining how your research is embedded in your work, it really, and the reason why I'm pulling this out, Andre, is because I want lookers on and the viewership to understand that dance is not just get up and shake, you know, because many individuals who do not see dance as art, who do not see dance as academics, who do not see dance as a discipline, they figure that for those of us who make dance look easy, it's no big thing, I could do that, right? And they don't
Right.
understand the foundations that, and I did say foundations because we're not talking only about the physical ability. We're talking about the discipline. We're talking about how you were molded, who molded you, who took you along the way, along the journey, you know, because dancers have multiple stories in their lives. It's not just one story, but I just need to shut up and stop rambling right now.
No, no, no.
Because but I wanted to ask you about this statement though. Well, there's a statement about creativity. It seems philosophical when you said dance is more than an artistic expression, but a placemaking of multiple existences and experiences. Am I right when I say it sounds philosophical?
Yeah, it is. This hemisphere and the creation of this hemisphere, um, and the middle passage, dance means for Black bodies and for people of African descent, especially if we descend from those who were brought over through the middle passage.
Uh-huh.
Dance means something different than it did in continental Africa pre transatlantic slave trade.
Uh-huh.
Even in on the western continent, the continent of Western Europe, because of codes of conduct and the economy of what the enslaved system was, different from any other period of enslavement. So based off of this ridiculousness of skin color and geographic origin and the way in which we expressed our bodies became an illegal act. And that that illegality of communicating, of doing, of in and many and I'm not sure in Guyana, but across other colonies and in the United States colonies, the playing of, after the Stono Rebellion in present day South Carolina, the playing of drums with hands of Africans was outlawed because it communicated then that get the body ready. And the way in which the body became ready to enact and really become powerful was through, hence, the dance or the movement. And so Black bodies moving, especially together, really becomes something that is, again, and this goes back to the name of the company, Renegade Performance Group. It goes against the oppression that has been enacted to create a status quo. And so, when we fast forward, then, and we can look at, the revolutionary gesture of the dancing space. If we think of Lindy Hop and swing dancing in the 1930s and the 40s, an integrated dance space of Black and quote Black and white bodies dancing together, let's say at the Subway Ballroom, became like the ultimate gesture of quote freedom in the United States, where that like, again, that happened in that was a Black space where it's just like, you now have the ability to live and be your best self, whoever you are, come dance. And so dance from that source point is not just about an expression. I mean, yes, we can even look at, and I know this is controversial with people as well. We can look at a Bilbo Jangles Robinson tap dancing and cooning or Uncle Tomming, but still underneath that, that's actually still quite a revolutionary gesture that he is doing, even tap dancing with the Shirley Temple, in the sense that he's placemaking himself in a way that only he can do. And so I think that's pretty wonderful, in the sense that that became, as much as people say, oh yes, Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, yeah, but they were only able to find their truest selves through a Black art form, through a practice of Blackness, which is just kind of like amazing, and through jazz music and what have you. And so I guess I'm saying is that, and then the relationship to music, which elicits this response from the body, that goes against, or that begins to not only goes against, but it begins to dismantle white oppressive tendencies and policies and actions, which ultimately like constrain persons and people from being their best selves.
I like it. I like it. I like it. And I forgot to mention, I like your t-shirt too. Brooklyn Till I Die.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. I appreciate that.
So for those of you joining me, I'm sitting with Andre Zachery, who I will just put the overarch piece here, that he's an interdisciplinary artist with a lot of other pieces underneath. Let's take a look at more of Andre's work right now, and then we'll come back and talk some more.
Feminine
Andre, for those of you who are joining us, I'm sitting with Andre Zachery, interdisciplinary artist, dancer, choreographer, researcher, scholar. I got to take a drink of water before I come back with the rest. But Andre, again, I look at that piece called Web Fuse, yes, and I don't know where to look because of the multi stuff that's happening, the interdisciplinary artistic pieces that are being put together. Let me be proper. Now, I chose that piece also because I noticed quite a few things about your work, but let me mention a few here. One, you do a lot of earthy stuff. That's one thing. And then you do a lot of flying stuff, right? So you're with the highs and the lows, you're there. And then I noticed that you do not use what I will say is regular music. And I'm just saying this so that when we show more of your work, or if our viewers were not paying attention to what they saw before, you know, it wasn't really regular music. I think this is the only piece that I've selected, I think, that has anything close to regular music, I would say. You know, because it's really, the music or the sounds that you use are really jarring in some ways, in which the sounds are speaking to dancers in a way like only the dancers can hear, and then they make the choreographer's dream come alive in the way the dance unfolds. So we just watched this piece, Web Fuse.
Yes.
And I want to know, how has this piece been influenced by your research? What was the background noise for this piece? What got you into creating Web Fused?
No, thank you so much for selecting this piece, actually. This actually was inspired by the research of Dr. Nadine George Graves, who is, again, an amazing scholar, choreographer in her own right as well, of Jamaican ancestry. She's currently the head of the dance department at the Ohio State University, and she wrote a piece called diaspora webbing, and she was looking at Kweku Anansi, or Anansi stories, and using the analogy of Kweku Anansi, the spider, essentially, and how the web in which Anansi builds is akin to the web that still connects us across the diaspora. But then she took it a step further and talking about like this worldwide digital web, when we say the World Wide Web, and then how the web itself of the globe, of how the longitudinal and latitudinal lines are in a way are much like Anansi's spider web that hold it. And so in reading that, I was just like, that's it, that's the piece. And Dr. Nadine is an amazing um, scholar on Afrofuturism as well. And so really, that entire work was inspired by her words, and so when we see like the projections kind of coming across and then intersecting, I'm thinking about this spider web or this web of forming based off of Kweku Anansi and and Anansi stories that were told as to people as children.
So I get that. I truly get that. Now, how was the choreography connecting to?
Yeah. So for me, the first part was really, as you're saying, starting from the ground up, and so it really uh, was looking at this idea of, again, like bodies being on water. So they're starting in this kind of swaying motion. So, and then from there, they slowly begin
Mhm,
to take themselves to their feet.
mhm,
When a lot of the choreography is still, as you're saying, going through and underneath, in between other bodies and their own bodies and themselves. And
mhm.
so for me, I was thinking about like how and looking at a spider, let's say, uh, it was also something where I remember I was living in Florida. I was at Florida State at the time, and spiders would create these beautiful web. And if the sun hit them at a specific angle, it would really just glisten, and
Yeah.
you would just see this intricate pattern. And sometimes you could see the spider swinging and then going, like so. And it's just like, oh wow, that's Anansi at work. And so it was really just thinking like, again, how do you embody that? Like, what does that feel like and look like?
So tell me about the music because the music sounded very modern day.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So the music is that's a collaboration between Flying Lotus and Kendrick Lamar.
Okay.
Um, the the rapper MC Kendrick Lamar. I guess I'm sure you know him.
Mhm,
Um, and then Flying Lotus is this sound artist, DJ, kind of like just extraordinaire, really. And funny enough, his aunt is Alice Coltrane. Um, that is actually his mother's sister, the late great Alice Coltrane. So, um, y- you know, all of that was kind of built into the work. Um, and the song is entitled "Never Catch Me."
mhm.
And so it's thinking about like a non, in a, when we think about
Okay. That's the connection.
uh, Anansi is like, yeah, Anansi is like this. He's crafty and never,
Yes,
and as always, kind of like,
yes.
and it's just kind of like, yeah, like you're never going to be able to capture that. Even if you capture Anansi, it's like you can never capture the essence um, of what kind of Anansi represents. So
Now,
that's kind of where the music came from.
so let me ask you, the dancers. I mean, because of the lighting effects, I couldn't tell. They looked young. Were they young, like teenagers, or they were adult dancers?
They were students. They were enrolled at Florida State University. So I created and set this piece at FSU in fall 2016, which is now 4 years ago. Wow. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So it might not seem like that piece is actually quite old, but yeah, I did it 4 years ago. Yeah.
So looking back, let's talk about that for a quick bit. Looking back
Hmm.
on this piece that you've done 4 years ago, and I don't know if you've looked at it between then and now, the way that you sat and you watched part of it. What are your thoughts though? Because I know as creatives, well, don't even let me say it, but let me ask you, and then I'll tell you what I'm thinking. Looking back at what you'd created 4 years ago, what are your thoughts about this piece, Web Fuse?
It's still one of my favorite works that I've created. I had a lot of fun creating that piece with the students. it really gave me a lot of freedom. I feel like that piece really allowed me to feel like I could just, you know, dance again, and not uh, and not hold back,
Mhm.
um, in ways that, yeah, I really, and I pushed myself really design wise and technologically with that work. That really was a big piece for me to like, um,
So,
yeah,
I wonder if I didn't want to lead you yet to think this,
uh
what
huh,
to say. I wonder if you look back at your works, 5 years, works that were done 5 years earlier, right? And you wonder and you
yeah,
say, my goodness, what was I thinking, right? That's one thought.
uh,
Or,
uh,
I like this. This has potential for growth. Why don't I add this layer?
right.
So I'm giving you, I mean, it's two ends of the stick pretty much. I just threw out. Have you gone through that with any of your particular, any particular works? And if so, have you developed any?
I would say that would be probably my earlier work. Like,
Okay.
I would say that's probably work from, I would say 2007 to 2011.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, like those works, I can look back. I was like, oh, what was I doing? I was young. I was like, oh, you know. But then after 2012, 2011, 2012, I started to really create, um, I think from a more, really just a more honest place,
Okay.
a place of not being in perfection. Um, in all honesty, when I started to really take away the need to have ballet as a recognizable vocabulary in my work, I felt better creating.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because ballet is
Um,
very strict. You know,
it
there's a
is,
particular
yeah.
way to hold your body, a particular way to hold your place your feet, there's a particular way to hold your arms, if not.
Hmm.
And
Right.
there's all this research about, black folks doing ballet. There's all that research about that, right?
Hmm.
Let me ask you, collaboration. Well, I'm thinking that collaboration is a very big part of what you do. And I
Hmm.
really love that because it really gives you a chance to spread your wings and 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 push your boundaries where creativity is concerned. And you have worked with various groups. I'm wondering if there was an experience whereby you set out to create a piece with this
Hmm.
group and it just didn't turn out the way that you envisioned because of what the
Ah,
dancers are bringing or because of now that you're putting it on the bodies, it's not playing out right. Talk to us about that.
hum. Well, yes. So that actually goes back to your first question. One of my pieces I did, not this piece, Web Cubes, but another piece I did called Untitled Distances. It didn't, I wasn't a lot, it was more, it wasn't the dancer's fault at all. I take all accountability when I'm creating. I make sure that, those people who are working with me know that, for me it's about, but I wasn't allowing myself to just release and dance in a way that I knew how, because I was worried about, considerations, approaches of like, postmodernism and experiment, and which once I started to really throw that out the window, so this piece Untitled Distances that I did in 2015, I was able to look back and say, I'm not really happy with that. But then when I was able to do it again at, I reset it on some students at UCLA, I was much happier with the choreography. Of course, you know, they were young students and they couldn't necessarily execute it in the way that I wanted, but structurally and choreographically, I was so much happier with what I did and how I really set up that piece. Um, and yeah, I guess that's a great example. And that was in 2019 that I created the piece at UCLA, and
Oh,
I
that's
had created. Yeah, it was recent, but the piece originally I created in 2015. So yeah, it
so
came a long way.
well, yeah, you're walking right into a thought that I am having right now.
Hmm.
And you just talk about expression. When you let go of the ballet, you became freer, you became free, you know,
Hmm.
instilling the dance differently on a different group of dancers years after. So you're talking about your growth also, your development as an artist.
Right.
All of
Yeah.
those coming into play for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
When you look at your choreographic works, when you look at if I were to put you to sit and press record on maybe a choreography a year for the last 10 years or the last 15 years,
Wow.
what from real life practices you would say would have compelled you to send a particular message through your work? And let me tell you why I'm asking that. As creatives, there's something that's always pulling us, and
Right.
it comes out, and you can look at it. It's like Horton, right? It's like Martha Graham, right? It's like
Right.
Zachery, right? What is that
Yeah.
Zach trademark that you would say, oh, I'm at it again? Oh, I see, but in a good way.
Right.
Trademark.
Um, I think it's this subliminal physicality. I think it's this really this very grounded but soft balance of physicality that's kind of my trademark. Yeah, I think that would have to be it. Um,
Yeah.
so
You
it's cool, but it's also very rugged.
You know what? I'm so happy to hear you say that, because the way you use your body, and you're so springy on you're springy on your feet,
Hmm.
and because you understand your body so well. And I have to say, there are a lot of people who have technique, but they don't understand how to use their body as that instrument as a dancer. And you do that so well, because it's one time you're on the floor, and then you're on your shoulder, and before you know it, you're on your feet, and then you're back on your knee, you're back on your feet, and then you're in the air. And you do all of that. So I'll pull from the young people, so fresh, so effortlessly. So I'm glad to
Thank
hear
you.
you say that, because when I look at your works, I really do see that. It's like, sometimes you start off with what appears to be a sharp movement, but it ends up being very soft, because the way that you propelled yourself to roll and then land on your knee, you just come up so softly. So
Yeah, thank
I'm
you.
saying all of that to say that there is a Zachery trend there. There's a Zachery movement that you need to play on.
Yeah, and I think that's something um, that I fully embraced. That's definitely everything that I am now, I guess, more unafraid to like really embody, um, and and just really give it to people without reservation. I guess
Right,
if
right.
that's the best way I could say it.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
like,
And the thing is too, it's yours. And
yeah,
people try it and they wouldn't be able to do it like you. So that's the beautiful thing.
I know.
That's the beautiful thing. So let's watch more of your work. So listen, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I am excitedly chatting with Andre Zachery, who is an interdisciplinary artist, and he does the choreographic works, he does the dancing works himself, he does the multimedia stuff, and you know, on a good day, I guess he could play the piano. And do you sing? I know I'm pushing the envelope. I'm just saying that because I know you had some piano lessons when you were 10. But do you sing?
I do sing as well. I probably sing better than I play the piano actually. So.
Oh, hey, nobody would hear how badly you were playing the piano if you're singing and dancing at the same time. But let's watch more of your work, Andre. Let's watch more of your work.
Okay, cool. Oh wow, yeah, power source.
Andre, we were just talking about it, and here you come, and you do your due. That's the only way that Andre can do it. So that piece is called Power Source 4. So I'm thinking there was a Power Source 2, 3, and then 4. Is there a 5 by chance?
No, that was the final power source.
What was
That
behind?
was a power source was the first. Power source was a collaboration between myself and a former collaborator, Jeremy Toussaint Baptiste, and we did that our first power source in 2012, and then um, every time that we would do a collaboration together, we would call it power source.
Oh,
And so um, actually there might have been a power source 5. No, it was a power source 5 actually. Funny enough, when we went to we presented it at MIT, at Massachusetts Institute of Technology. But
okay.
some of the feedback that you were hearing, it's kind of, again, you can't really you'll never see it, but um, my body tracking, we I was able to take the motion sensor from, I was using the Xbox Connect, and my body positioning on the floor was able to give feedback that Jeremy was then able to sound mix into
Ah,
um, the wider piece. So
okay.
again, I guess that's it's that's not something you can't really see feedback or like tracking, but that's what was happening. And so those are kind of the experiments that we were that we were playing with and like kind of devising between this relationship of the body and sound and vice versa.
You know, looking at your work, Andre, and I mean this with all sincerity, you know, I really consider you an innovator, an initiator because of the risks that you're taking with being an interdisciplinary artist, of course, with a foundation of dance. And that's really, really sweet because you're really making it challenging in a good way for the young dancers to really study this craft, you know, and for them to learn that it's not an art form to be taken lightly, period. So I'm really glad to see your research, how it's unfolding, and your works also, you know, that you're pretty much creating a legacy here, and I like it. You know, I really
Thank you.
like it. But pre-pandemic, I would say before pre-pandemic, you were weaving this stuff. You know, all these different disciplines. You were weaving them together before the pandemic.
Right.
So now Zachery's kind of sexy because Zachery was doing all of these things before the you know. So I mean, I have to really hammer that home that you must be feeling very proud of your work, knowing that you do not have to catch up, so to speak.
Thank you. Well, that's a way of putting it. Yes. Going back to what you were saying about imparting how much work it does take to create this and be with the craft. I think part of it was in doing work like this, you have to embrace things that don't work, and you have to like really just put those out, you know, publicly. You know, you're really publicly putting out moments of success and failure in work, especially in uh, interdisciplinary methods. And I guess now looking back, it never really occurred to me how much I didn't allow that to uh, dissuade me, or I didn't fear that. And it was just like, well, yeah, you know, that might not work, but you know, work like hell to try and make it happen. And
Yeah.
that's, you know, that's a lot of behind the scenes work, studying, coding, just as equally as, you know, you're coming up with your choreography, um, which is a lot of sleepless nights and what have you. But I guess that's the thing is that you, I also want to impart, and some people might not embrace this, but I want young dancers to know that it's not about always being perfect in creating these work. It's about embracing a sense of um, experimentation and failure in real time, like, you know, while you're doing it, which is that takes a lot of courage. It really does. It's not easy to do, um, and it. But for me, it's been rewarding in the sense that I've been able to discover, as you're saying, right now I'm at a place where all of that work and experimentation has led to this point where in, you know, in this pandemic it's just like, oh well, yeah, I've been working like that for, you know 6 7 years, and as you're saying, I'm essentially equipped to manage this and to work well in this, but I also gave myself the opportunity um to try and fail, which, you know, looking back, I kind of wish I had done even more, honestly. Um, so that would be what I would want to impart to others and younger artists.
Yeah, yeah. I believe it or not, we're a quarter of the hour. You believe that? I want to ask
I
you
can't actually.
one question
Sure.
before we look at some more of your work.
Mhm.
You've also addressed and continue to address the rewriting of narratives as they relate to and I'm going to quote you, open quote, figurative, non-figurative, and post-figurative positions. If you can briefly explain that to me, what do you mean when you speak of those, you know, figurative, non-figurative, and post-figurative? How does it, how do these play into your creations?
I think we can look at a piece of mine. We might show it. It's called DAP line, which looks at the DAP.
Okay.
And so
It's gonna come up. Yeah, we'll look at it.
yeah, and so DAP line is it's also, that's essentially a narrative about Black masculinity and Black maleness, that to me hits all three of those categories of the figurative and the me as like a Black identifying male, born male, masculine body, and my trajectory on this earth. Then the non-figurative, meaning like the action, like, well, what, like, how do we embrace? How do we, how do we touch? What are those gestures, these actions, that thing that also kind of that also are their own narrative, and then the post-figurative, what does that leave behind? What does my Black body, my Black male body, what has that imparted, or what has that given the world beyond what is, quote, known from an immediate lens or framework, but that we as a people, like we people know, that can now be introduced, I guess. And that's why, the technology in film is so important for me, is saying, well, we're so used to these various figures being given, but now we have this entire opportunity over here to create this other narrative and space to impart the information that might be unrecognizable over here, and why it's so important for this to be cultivated and supported. And so that's essentially what that statement means.
It's funny, as you were talking, I had a fleeting thought of Black Lives Matter, and what it stands for today, and all the racial injustice, and, talking about the works that our ancestors have, what our ancestors have gone through, the work of the greats like Martin Luther King, what he stood for, what we've been anticipating for over 400 years, and all of that stuff. Just had that thought, but of course, that's for another conversation. But let's take another look at a couple of your works. I think we'll look at DAP line, promotion, and intricate simplicity. Oh, I love that piece. But for those of you who are joined us, I'm sitting with Andre Zachery, who is an interdisciplinary artist. Let's watch some more of his work. it. I love it. For those of you who might have joined us late, I am sitting with Andre Zachery, who is a dancer choreographer, researcher, scholar, interdisciplinary artist. What a phenomenal dancer you are.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. There is this negative attachment to boys dancing. And I know this might be a loaded question, but I have to ask you, what do you say to parents of boys? Boys who would like to dance, I'm talking about, who would love to dance. And the parents' response is that dancing is for girls. What do you say to those parents?
You want me to give my real answer?
Yeah, please.
Well, I would really question them as parents. I would really want them to question themselves of why they are parents, really, to say such a, I mean, really a beyond ignorant statement. But I would really just kind of question and say, like, do you really want to be a parent? Like, are you sure this is a job? Like, do you really want children? Uh, yeah, it's just, that just makes no sense to me.
I get, and I respect your honest and open answer. But I say that because I have experienced situations where boys were told that they're not going to dance because that is girly stuff, and they
Right.
were forced to play games that they really didn't care about playing. There are some parents who really try to
Yeah.
channel their children in a particular direction.
I would again kind of ask those parents to probably seek some type of like therapy for themselves to like get through their own um, emotional or psychological um, baggage. Because I mean, what does that have to do with the child? That has to do with you. You know what I mean? Like that has nothing to do
Yes,
with your child. Like
right.
your child has literally expressed. That's like me looking at, if I have a woman or girl born child, and she says, yeah, father, I really want to be a firefighter. I want to be a firefighter. Okay, great. Well, this is what we're gonna need you to do to become a firefighter, and not saying, oh, that's a man's job. Are you kidding? Like, one of the projects I did at when I was in grad school, I met a black woman fire lieutenant of the FDNY. She served. She might still be at the fire station right there on Dean Street, right off of Flatbush. And she was the vice president of the Vulcan Society of Black Firefighters in New York City. Um, I mean, like, what does that mean? Like, huh?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know? I mean, like, so that's one side. I mean, that's like on a serious, like,
mhm,
come on. But I think it's this thing also where, as an art, as a form, dance. I it's not that I think I know. It's that the construct of what, again, these ideas of masculinity uh, not even they're beyond superficial, but they also then yield very serious consequences in the sense that, um, you know, me being in this art form has allowed me to express, communicate, to find my own voice in ways that, um, that's literally integral to the art form. So as you're saying, you're asking me questions. I have to communicate with you about what my work is communicating about how, and so literally, I mean, we're in this huge space of communication, which, from what I've heard, is a very important part about maintaining good relationships.
right.
And so, it's this funny thing too, where it's just like people often attribute to men, oh, you don't know how to communicate, you don't communicate well, and blah blah blah. But then at the same time, we're not encouraging young people to, especially young men, to be in spaces where they can communicate. So then it's just like, so then you expect them at adulthood to
Yeah,
be able
all
to
of a sudden,
somehow magically find these communication skills. that structurally and societally was denied from them. But now, because you want it,
Yeah.
you're like, oh, you need to find it. But that was never encouraged or given. So it's this again. So it's like, well, what do we really want? Like what do you really what do we really want here? Because you want it now, but then you don't want it then. But then that has nothing to do with again that has nothing to do with the child. That's about actually how you as the adult
Yeah.
want to appear before your friends and your whatever society, like these really superficial ridiculous things. That
Yeah.
has nothing to do with actually helping whomever or whatever your child wants to be in the most positive aspect of life. And if we're thinking about dance, what? It's, you know what I mean? It's kind of like,
Yeah.
you know, like, well, what are you talking? Like, only girls dance? Like, what? What? Like, who said that?
Yeah,
Like, that's the most ridiculous thing ever.
it is the societal construct, you know, and these
Yeah.
gender roles that are kind of antiquated ideals. And, you know, anyways, I just wanted to get your thought on that. And this is the last question, and I'm looking at the time. We have to wrap up now, but
Oh yeah, I see.
I need to get this from you. What does the future hold for Renegade Performance Group? In a few words.
Um, a new personal project from Andre. That's gonna dig into a little bit deeper layers of Black masculinity based off of my own upbringing in Chicago. And then um, hopefully a larger group work that will remix a classic work. I won't say what classic work it is yet. So, yeah, I've never done a reimagining of a classic work, but I want to do one.
Wow. Do you have any dates in mind?
Well, I was trying to do 2021 for the solo work.
Oh,
That looks a little bit
yeah.
maybe late 2021. I mean, you know, everything has been pushed back, so I want to say early 2022, and then 2023 for the larger work.
Okay. Sounds
Yeah.
good. Sounds good. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, you heard it. So we're wrapping this up, and I want to say thank you to my guest today, Andre Zachery, and please visit his Facebook page or his website. Look for Renegade PG for Performance Group.com, and you'll be able to follow his work. I know he has a lot of videos on Vimeo, so you'll get to see him really sinking himself deep into his works. But before I close, I must remind you of Ghana Cultural Association's virtual folk festival season. Yes, we finished yesterday with our literary hang and symposium, and on Wednesday, the 2nd of September, I can't believe we're talking about September already. It's the award ceremony, and then the Friday after that, on the 4th, is Come to My Kwekwe. On the 6th, it would be the Sunday, Family Fun Day. Please visit GCA's Facebook page to get more information about this. And like I do, I have to say thank you to viewers for joining. And when I say thank you to you viewers for joining, I put you to my left side, and then I pull out from my right side, and I put at the top of that list the man behind all of this, making this happen, Raul De Silva. Stop blushing, Raul. I have to say thank you for Raul, for making this magic work. And there's been some development behind the scenes for the program, and I have to acknowledge Claire Goring. I know she didn't want me to do this, but I have to tell you, the beautiful flyers that you've been seeing every week since this program started, they've been done by Claire Goring. So Claire, I know I'm busting you open, but I love you, sis, and I have to say thank you for the world to hear. Marcia Gordon, thank you. Marcy is working on the YouTube channel. Yes, we're migrating all of this stuff to YouTube. And Yash Sunarayan is working on a website. So things are happening for arts, culture, and things in between. And a special shout out to Dr. Raul Manzano. He knows why. I'm saying thank you. Again, thank you to Andre and for the spectacular work that you're doing. And I just I'm throwing a lot of love out there for you as you continue on your journey of creativity. I humbly applaud you and say thank you. Raul,
Thank you.
thank you, my brother, to viewers. Thanks again. Have a wonderful and productive week. And please stay safe, and we'll see you next time.